Hello, this is Justin Mason, and what you're about to hear is recordings from last weekend's Podapallooza 2024. This was a live stream event hosted over 2 days, 20 hours in total. And sometimes during this event, because so many different people are involved, the audio isn't quite what you would expect from a normal podcast. I hope you still enjoy the content, but I apologize if there is some choppiness or rough listening at points. Enjoy. Because we have another fantastic panel, just 2 hours to go. So if you want to be entered in to win some of these amazing prizes, get in right now by donating to donorbox.org/TGFBI. Currently, we are sitting at, $2,700 for the weekend, $8,900 for the draft season between TGFBI participants, TGFBI satellite participants, and Podapallooza. So I really, really appreciate everyone who's been donating. I'm really hopeful we can get over that $9,000 mark or even higher for the entire draft season. So keep that money coming in. Every dollar you donate gets you entered in to win these amazing prizes that we're going to be giving out after Podapallooza is over. So let's bring in the next panel. We have Jake Crumpler. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug all your work.
Follow me on Twitter at Jake Crumpler, and you can find all my work at Pitcher List and Baseball HQ, and then my personal website, crumplerbaseball.com, just has everything all in one nice spot.
Perfect. We also have Bryson coming on. How you doing, Bryson?
Hello. I'm good, thanks.
Remind everybody where you can reach and what you do.
For sure, yeah. Most of my stuff will just be on Twitter/X, whatever you call it. Just at my username there, Bryson TK. And in the next month or two, hopefully, I'll be putting out more consistent content on another platform, but I'm working on that right now. But for the moment, just find me on X.
There you go. And we had Dr. Dave last segment. This time we have Dr. Mike. How you doing, Mike?
First of all, I have to always say this when I come on because my wife is lurking. I am not a doctor, a doctor of anything, a doctor of chaos and doom, maybe, but that's about it. So, hi, guys, everybody. Mike Carter here. I work over at Fantrax, covering bullpens. I just started at Rotoballer a few weeks ago, and I also work at the Fantasy Baseball Beat on the podcast with my buddy Chris Torres. So, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be on with you guys tonight.
Absolutely. This should be a fun panel. I hope you guys enjoy yourself. I'm going to turn it over to Jake so I can keep working on my pitcher projections while I listen to you guys. See you guys in a little bit.
All right. Well, how's everybody doing? I know Justin just asked that, but I figured I might as well do it while the teacher's out of the room.
Doing very well today. Yeah, it's a beautiful Sunday here outside of Chicago. It's about 60 degrees. The sun was out. It's going to be 70 tomorrow, and then it's going to be 30 on Tuesday. So if you don't like the weather in Chicago, wait a while. It'll change. We're going to have 4 seasons in about 48 hours. So.
All right. Well, I'm in California, so weather is usually pretty nice, and actually it's also a wonderful day here. But, that means it's a perfect time to talk about baseball and specifically hitting targets for fantasy baseball. That's what we are on here to discuss. We will sort of go through every category, talk about our targets there, and then talk about our favorite targets at each position. But if you guys are ready, we can just hop right into it.
Let's go
for it.
All right. So we'll start with the targets for each category, and we'll start with home runs. That's the most exciting one. And I'll start with you, Bryson. Who's a player you're targeting for home runs?
Yeah, so for me, with the home run category, I've been trying to gather as much O'Neal Cruz shares as I can for that category. Obviously, last year with the injury was a lost season for him, so that was unfortunate because I was also looking forward to him. I drafted him a lot last year as well. Obviously, with Cruz, it's the old story of a big frame, so you gotta live with some strikeouts. But He does have really big power, which I think sometimes people forget about. In 2022, he managed to hit 17 home runs in 360 plate appearances. And that was, that's only 87 games. So that's not a full season by any means. So if he can even, get you 25 home runs, 22 to 25, maybe push 30, who knows? We don't really know with him because he hasn't really had a full season yet. But I just think his ADP isn't crazy, and I like to tackle home runs kind of early because I find that that's a stat, a category that kind of fades away as you go throughout the draft. So, I've been targeting him a lot just because there's so much potential there, and I'd rather have him on my team and see him finally put that all together than watch him do that on someone else's team.
Yeah, we probably would have seen it last season if not for that injury at home plate. But the guy definitely has some elite power. Just the exit velocity numbers we saw in his debut campaign was enough to get everybody just super pumped for, the future of his career.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm excited for a full season of him.
All right, and Mike, who are you targeting for home runs?
I have a question I have to ask you guys before I say anything. So I'm old. You guys are both much younger than me. Does anybody still use the term going ham?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay. So I can say that. Okay, so my guy here that I really, really like that I'm targeting in a lot of places is Seiya Suzuki because I think he's going to go ham. Did I use that correctly?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay. I never know. I've got 2 teenagers that live at my house, and they're always making fun of my lack of lingo that I know. But I think Suzuki really is a guy to target this year for home runs. Now, he's had 2 seasons under his belt in the major leagues. In 2022, he hit 14 home runs with a 262 average. Last year, he got that up to 20 with a 285 average. If you really look at his StatCast page, he's got that blood red that you like to see, right? The expected batting average is 283 last year. His hard hit percentage is at 84th percentile at 48%. He doesn't chase. He doesn't strike out a lot. And in his month of September, which I think a lot of people kind of forgot, he carried the Cubs to an almost playoff spot. He had 7
until he
home
missed
runs.
that fly ball.
This is true, but I wasn't going to bring that up, Jake. Okay, see, because if I'm a long-suffering White Sox fan, so if I bring that up, I'm a jerk, right? Like they actually got.
I did it for you.
I think. Thank you. Well, the White Sox won 61 games last year. Let's just get that out of the way. But his September was great. I mean, he had 7 home runs, 26 RBIs, and hit 370. If that's a precursor of things to come with his level of comfort playing there, and now I even like it more with Bellinger resigning there in Chicago, if he's able to kind of continue doing what he did last year, which was kind of odd. We'll talk about that later. But Suzuki is a guy that I think could easily get to 30 home runs. Roster Resources projecting him for, I think, 23 right now, and I think he could far surpass that given the right circumstances and good health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when players come over from MPB, you sort of have to wait for them to get comfortable sometimes. And that has sort of been the case with Suzuki, especially because he's dealt with a lot of injuries as well. So that second half performance, I think, is definitely weighing for me that gets me really excited for, a full season of that level of play. The guys that I'll be targeting for home runs, I did a more early round pick and then a later round pick. I had Spencer Torkelson. He did hit 30 home runs last year, so it's not really a surprise that you would target him for home runs, but I really like where he's going at in drafts in terms of, the whole first base pool in general. And the incredible StatCast numbers that he has and his second half performance last year sort of has him hinting at a 35 to 40 home run season, which would be crazy. And he's got the prospect pedigree and the draft where he was drafted number 1. So he's got everything going for him that he should be able to attain that. And then my other guy is Jack Suwinski, who has great exit velocity numbers. It's really just the strikeouts holding him back, but he does have 30 plus home run power. He just hasn't reached that yet. And I think in a full year playing for the Pirates and hopefully getting a little bit better against left-handers definitely helps him to get to 30 home runs.
Jake, can I ask you a follow-up question on Suwinski? I was at a draft last night watching a local draft. I got invited to go, and a guy was poo-pooing Suwinski, saying that he did not think Suwinski was going to play every day. Do you think the at-bats are going to be there for him? I felt like they would be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't play him, but I mean, they definitely could platoon him, which would be the biggest problem. They have enough right-handed bats off the bench like Connor Joe and Edward Olivares that they can platoon him. And, that would make sense given his struggles against left-handers. And I think that'd be the only thing holding him back. But if you're in a daily league, that makes him super ideal because you can swap him out when he's not playing. But yeah, I feel like just the per plate appearance numbers that he's going to get are going to be very good. So if you know that he's going into a week where he's facing, 3 left-handed starters or whatever, you can just bench him. But yeah, that's definitely a fair, concern to have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move over to runs. Bryson, I'll start with you again. Who are you targeting for runs?
Yeah, for runs, I went with George Springer. Again, he had 87 runs, 87 runs last year. So it's not like he's a guy who didn't get any runs, and he's been in the league for a long time. So it's not like a sleeper pick by any means. But I just like that he's most likely batting leadoff for the Jays. If not top of the order, then probably second. You can get him past round 1 or pick 100, like his ADP is about 102. So you're not taking him super early, which is really nice because then, I do know so he's getting up there in age, and sometimes that can be a bit scary to start taking guys when they get older. But at that ADP, I think he's a low enough risk pick that batting in, the beginning of that really, solid Jays lineup, even though they don't seem to want to sign anybody at the moment, but they still have a really good lineup, and being, he's just a proven player. And I think with runs, any stat really, but especially runs, I find I try to target guys who are in the top of the orders on good teams, and he just kind of fits that criteria. And again, taking him at 102, I'd be completely happy with that. Obviously, if his ADP rises, then I would probably be a little less in on him, but I like where he's going at the moment, and it is draft season, so I feel like he's probably going to stay around there.
Yeah, that seems to be the archetype for a runs target, is just somebody leading off ahead of a couple of good hitters. And that's basically, you can lock them in for 85 runs. Mike, I feel like that's the case for yours as well.
Yeah, I have a really boring, unsexy pick here for this one. But, you have to have these boring, unsexy guys as well sometimes. Being a boring, unsexy guy myself, I relate strongly to players that are that way as well. I really like Stephen Kwan in this role. I think he's a guy that's going to get a ton of at-bats batting in an order that I think is developing. I think they have some guys coming through there, the Naylor brothers. Obviously, J-Ram is there. They've got some guys there that I think, and Kyle Manzardo, who we met in Arizona, who was great. Looks like he's going to be a good player too. I think he's going to score a lot of runs. Even so, if you kind of look at his data for the first 2 seasons, he's going to get a lot of at-bats. We know that. And so he had 638 plate appearances in 22, 718 last year. So he's going to play 150 games as long as he's healthy. Not going to get a lot of home runs. He's going to get you double-digit steals. But what I really want here is the runs and the batting average floor. I mean, he had 268 last year, which I think was a little bit lower than what I think he actually could hit. I mean, his expected batting average last year was 282, which would put him in the 88th percentile in all of MLB. So boring guy, unsexy, but if he's your third outfielder in, a 15-team league, you could do a heck of a lot worse than that. He's going to help you in a few categories, runs being one. He had 89 runs, 22, 93 last year. I think he could get 100 there if he stays healthy this year.
Yeah, I think he's going even later than what a third outfielder would be. He's going after pick 200. So that's a pretty solid spot to be able to get him as even like a 4 or 5 outfielder, which is very solid. And I think a lot of people are scared away from him, especially in roto leagues, just because the lack of strikeouts doesn't help him as much as it would in, most points leagues. But he's definitely still a guy that's going to get on base a lot because of how much contact he makes. I also went with a couple leadoff guys. I went with Brandon Nimmo for the Mets. I do like the top of that order with Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso, and Nimmo walks a ton. And as long as he's able to stay healthy and sit atop that lineup, he's going to score 85 or more runs. And then my sneaky pick here is Luis Rengifo. The Angels lineup is, going downhill. They lost Shohei Ohtani, but Luis Rengifo is set to lead off this upcoming season. And we saw in the second half last year just how good he can be when he's playing at the top of his levels. I am a little concerned that, maybe they don't bat him leadoff. I've seen Mickey Moniak penciled in at leadoff a lot. But if we see Luis Rengifo hidden in the top of the order ahead of Mike Trout and I mean, say what you will about Anthony Rendon and Taylor Ward. I think he could score a pretty decent amount of runs, especially going really late in drafts.
Yeah, I like it because it's still a good lineup, even though you like losing Shohei, you obviously get worse, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad lineup by any means.
Yeah.
I still think that there's lots of potential there.
Yeah, and like any guy leading off is gonna score a decent amount of runs as long as they're up there consistently.
Unless it's Andrew Benintendi for the White Sox, in which case he's going to score like 40.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that was sort of expected. That contract was wild. We can move on to a runs batted in now. And we sort of go from the top of the order to the middle of the order. You want guys batting ahead of these guys so that they can knock them in. You want good guys that can get on base. And so a lot of times you can have these RBI guys linked with the runs guys. So like, for example, I mean, Pete Alonso is not going to be a name that we mentioned, but he's going to be knocking in Brandon Nimmo a lot. So if you can pair those two guys together, that's obviously sometimes really fun to be able to go and watch a team and be able to root for them because you have multiple players on that team. But Bryson, who are you targeting for RBI?
Yeah, my RBI's guy, well, it's Ian Happ, and I kind of wrote this before the big announcement about Bellinger coming back, but that doesn't really change the way I feel about Happ. With Bellinger, he still had 84 RBIs last year. He's usually batting in the heart of that Cubs lineup. I really like we talked about Suzuki already. I really like the Bellinger, Happ, Suzuki kind of lineup there. I think it's a really good, really solid lineup. But yeah, he's going a 147 again. So this is another guy where you're kind of getting him later into the draft a little bit, kind of not a top 100 guy. But if you can get 84 RBIs, even this year, he bumped it up to 90. I just really like him. And I think he's a name that kind of goes, like I said, under the radar, just, with Bellinger being there now. The big contract that Dansby Swanson got kind of gets forgotten about a little bit, but he's just a solid guy. He has been his whole career. And so I've always find myself just kind of grabbing him at that point in the draft to shore up some RBIs to go pair with the guys that I've gotten earlier in the draft that will also be giving me a good amount of RBIs.
Yeah, I think Happ's really underrated, especially in terms of runs and RBI, because he doesn't really stand out in any of the other three categories because he's not a 30 home run hitter. He's not a guy that's going to steal 20 bases, and he's not a guy that's going to bat 300, but he makes up for it by playing every day in the middle of the lineup. So he's going to get 80 or more runs and RBI. And that's an underrated stat. It's hard to, keep those in your mind while you're drafting because you're usually just thinking about home run, stolen bases, and average, and the runs and RBI sort of come with it. So if you are, conscious of that with a guy like that who's not standing out in the other three categories, you can really get a leg up on your competitors. And Mike, I see you're going for a homer pick here.
It's my only one though, Jake. I'm going to lay that out here. It's the only time I'm picking a White Sox here. And this is really kind of a caveat emptor kind of situation, right? We have to kind of wait and see how this plays out. But I think Andrew Vaughn is a natural pick for RBIs that are sneaky. He's getting drafted as a corner infielder in a lot of the leagues that I've been drafting so far. Nobody wants to take the plunge with him as a starter because he's another guy that's kind of an unsexy pick. But if you listen to my testimony for 30 seconds, I might be able to give you an idea as to why I like him. Roster Resource has him batting second, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think they have Moncada batting cleanup, and I don't think that's going to happen either. So I think Vaughn's going to bat cleanup. And if he's got Benintendi in front of him, my guess would be that they might try Moncada second. But I think Dominic Fletcher's going to win that right field job. He could be batting second there, and then Robert, and then Vaughn. He's got an opportunity to knock in some runs. He knocked in 80 last year on a really bad baseball team. And he was hurt. And a lot of people don't know that, but he played the second half of the season with a bone bruise in his lower leg and foot that really made it very painful for him to play. Yet he played, he persisted, and he didn't complain about it. So he only had 27 RBIs post All-Star break, but I really think that was more of a function of being hurt. The ironic thing is that he hit actually for a higher average after the All-Star break too. So it kind of depends on what you want to read there. But to me, 80 RBIs on a bad team, if he gets over 600 at-bats this year, which he should, they really don't have any competition for him. I mean, who's going to play first base? Gavin Sheets? I mean, does anybody need to see that ever again? I don't. So I think Vaughn's got a really good path to getting, 80-plus RBIs. 90 wouldn't surprise me, and 25 home runs could be fine. and you're looking at a guy that probably can hit 270 if he stays healthy. That's pretty good out of a corner infield spot, I think.
Yeah, I've been waiting for his breakout for a while as a guy that graduated from Cal. I have a Cal family.
Right.
My grandpa,
that's right. I forgot
and
about
my mom
that.
worked there. Yeah. So Vaughn is definitely somebody I've been rooting for a while. So I hope that breakout comes. Last year I was really banging the drum for him. It didn't really happen, but I feel like there's another level to his game. The RBIs guys that I'm targeting are pretty obvious. Josh Naylor's one of them. He had like 97 RBI last year, so that one's not really like a sneaky pick or whatever. But, you know, with J-Ram and Quan and Andres Jimenez hitting ahead of him, I feel like he's guaranteed for another 90-plus RBI. But the other guy that I'm targeting a lot is Anthony Santander. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's just really safe, especially with Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman ahead of him, both guys that can get on base quite a bit. The only problem I do have is that he's a switch hitter. So when he's batting right-handed versus a left-handed pitcher, it's pretty tough to go deep in Camden Yards. However, he's just so safe for 25 plus home runs and 85 plus RBI that he feels just like such a nice pick to get. And he's not going super early either. I think he's post 100. 143. Yeah. So I had him as a third outfielder in 15 team leagues. And it feels really nice to get him just because I know he's going to knock in those guys all the time. And that lineup's just going to continue to get better as the young guys in that lineup progress as major leaguers. And now we can move to stolen bases, the second to last category here. And Bryson, who are you targeting for stolen bases?
Yeah, so the guy I went with for stolen bases was Jarren Duran. Obviously, you know, maybe a couple weeks ago, they announced that he's going to be batting leadoff for the Sox this year. He's another guy kind of who had a high prospect pedigree coming into the league and kind of didn't really deliver on that right away. And so I think there's a bit of fatigue there for a lot of fantasy players, especially if you're a dynasty fantasy player. You know, you kind of were waiting for him to come up and do something. And then last year he started to show kind of why he had that pedigree. And I think going into this year, I think he's going to give even more than just stolen bases. I think he's a great target for, you know, multiple categories, just batting the leadoff for them. But he's fast. People I think I forgot about it until I was kind of looking at stats the other day for the Red Sox. And yeah, he's a guy who I think he can give you 30 to 35 stolen bases. And on top of that, I think he's going to give you some runs. I think he's going to give you a decent average as well. He hit for a pretty good average last year as well. So but I really like it for the stolen bases just because 30 to 35 stolen bases isn't easy to find, especially he's at average AP right now of 207. So he's a guy that still hasn't really climbed up ADP quite as much, even with the news of him batting leadoff. And if he sticks at leadoff, that's, you know, you kind of have to wait and see with him because, like I said, last year was his first real, time he showed that he could, you know, put it all together essentially. And so I think he can, but we'll see. But again, at pick 207 or wherever you take him in that area, it's a low risk with, I think, a lot of high potential for good return on investment. So.
Yeah, I think staying in that leadoff spot is going to be integral to his maintaining his stolen base totals because, you know, when you move down in the lineup, sometimes that green light won't be on if you're batting sixth or something. But if he's batting ninth or first, like that's a great spot to be stealing a bunch of bases. I think you just got to be careful that he's not getting platooned. I know he has struggled against left-handers in his career, but last year he wasn't really overmatched. I think he had a 98 WRC plus. So he's definitely a guy that can somewhat handle left-handers. And yeah, I think it was really great to see him stop striking out as much as he had in his first two seasons because with a guy with his kind of speed, if you're making contact, you're going to give yourself a lot of opportunities to, you know, beat out a throw to first base. Mike, who are you targeting for stolen bases?
Give me all the Tyro Estrada, all of it, all of them. I really think this, and I don't know why I think this. This is just one of those stupid old man gut reactions, is that there's no statistics that really bear out what I'm about to say, but I think this is a guy that could hit 20 home runs and steal 30 bases easily. Especially given the circumstances that he's going to be in San Francisco. Jung-Hoo Lee is going to be batting in front of him, and I think he's going to hit for a high average and going to be on base a lot. And who knows what's going to happen behind that? I mean, you have Jorge Soler, you've got Lamont Wade, they've got Conforto, they've got some options there. But what I really like about Estrada is, again, he's another guy that's a volume play. He's a great glove. You know, he's going to be in the lineup. But I really look at him over the course of the last two seasons. You know, he finally got a chance at 22 to play He hit 260, 14 home runs, 21 steals. That's useful. Last year, he repeated the 14 home runs and the 23 steals, but I think people are forgetting too, he missed about a month of playing time in July. And when he came back, it took him a little while to get going again. So I think if you add another month worth of production in there, you got a guy that's going to have more home runs than what he had and maybe chip in a few more steals there. Now, I know that's a big if, and we can talk about all of those types of things that kind of go along with it. But where he's going, he almost feels like forgotten about, like he's kind of like his own floating tier of second base,
Mm-hmm.
But there are I prefer him over a lot of guys that are going earlier than him. And so I've kind of been waiting largely on second base. I don't know if that's wise or not, but I've been waiting.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's a bit of a crapshoot, right? But if I get Estrada as my starting second baseman, I'm totally good with that. And I really do think that there's a guy in there that could do like a 20 home run, 30 stolen base season. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he'll have to maintain the changes that he made last year. I see that he upped his pull rate and his fly ball rate, which is indicative of somebody that's going to hit more home runs. And yeah, if he gets close to 20 home runs or surpasses it, I think the stolen bases are already there. That's a great pick. And, as a Giants fan, I'm rooting for it. The two guys I got are Michael Garcia and Jose Caballero. Michael Garcia is sort of a wide awake sleeper right now. I feel like everybody's in on him to take his game to another level after showing incredible hard hit rates last year, but he's got a ton of speed. And I also like Jose Caballero because I think he's underrated in terms of the rest of his fantasy categories. Like we saw him steal 20 plus bases last year, but now he's going to Tampa where they are inclined to play him every day at shortstop because of how good he is defensively. And, probably Ahmed Rosario is going to take away a little from him after they acquired him recently for an insanely low amount of money. But that's beside the point. I think Caballero's pretty sneaky because he could steal a lot of bases. And if he's playing every day, those stolen bases could go up even higher. And he's going really late.
Yeah, it's a good name that I think, it still hasn't quite hit everyone's fantasy radars yet. So I think that's a great target to go after.
All right. And we'll move to the last spot, and that's batting average. Bryson, who are you targeting for batting average?
For me, I went with Riley Green. I'm a big Riley Green fan. Since he's a prospect. Yeah, I mean, he has the pedigree again, so it's not like he's a sleeper by any means. But I think again, he's a guy who came up and had high expectations and didn't quite meet people's expectations of what they thought when he was going to come up to the big leagues. I think the whole Detroit prospect, this Torkelson as well, was the same thing. Kind of people were waiting for it to happen. And I think last year we kind of saw signs of it for Torkelson, and obviously with Riley Green as well. I think he's due for a big 2024. His K rate was like 27%. So that's something that's, would like to see that come down a touch. But again, he's still so young. I think that's the thing to remember with him. Like guys like him and Torkelson, they've been in the league for a while, but they're still super young. So I think that K rate's a number, it's going to come with patience that develops over time. But yeah, I had BABIP of over 350. So you know what? I believe in him. I just believe in the bat too. That's the biggest thing, is just the eye test, just watching his at bats. I believe in his talent, and that's really, stats are awesome. But when I watch a guy play ball, that's a big indicator for me too. So that's who I'm targeting a lot. And he's going around and pick 167. So again, it's a guy who's after the 100s who you can get at a decent place in the draft.
And there's tons of upside there too. And it's pretty crazy that given the 27% strikeout rate, his expected batting average was basically the same as his average for the year, which was at 288. So, I feel like you're guaranteed at least a 285 batting average, which, is not 300, but I think we have to change our expectations for what a really good batting average is. And 285 is just that. Mike, I like your pick here. Who do you got for average target?
Well, I love Riley Green, and I love yours too. But another guy that I was thinking about, just for the sake of changing up so that we don't all agree on everything, was Vaughn Grissom. I think he's going to have a really good chance to play every day in Boston without anybody looking over his shoulder. I still don't really understand exactly what happened in Atlanta in terms of them. I guess they felt like he wasn't good enough to play shortstop, and then Arcia was there and he had a good year. But Grissom is a guy I think that very easily could hit in the 280s. He's got good speed. He's got a little bit of power, a little bit of speed combination there too. And he doesn't have to look over his shoulder anymore. I mean, if you look at what the Red Sox have, they've got Pablo Reyes, Emmanuel Valdez, the late, great Romy Gonzalez from the White Sox. I mean,
he's still alive.
I should say his prospect status, gone, right? So the White Sox don't really have prospects anymore, as we've talked about before. But the long story short of it is that I think Grissom is a really, really good pick here and kind of flying under the radar a little bit too. It's almost like people have said, oh, he got traded for Chris Sale, whatever. He's just going to be a spare part in Boston. I think he's going to play a lot. I don't know where he's going to hit in the order. I mean, probably further down. I don't see him hitting near the top at this point, but the possibility of him hitting in the 270s, 280 range, as you said, that's a good average now. I'm all in on him at that rate.
Yeah, it's an exciting pick. My two picks are also pretty exciting. I got Vinny Pasquantino as one of them. The guy just strikes out so little, just makes so much contact, sub 12% strikeout rate for his career. That's super low in this day and age. And despite batting 247 last year, he had an expected batting average of 279. So I think if people are just looking at his surface level metrics, they might be turned away given that that's not really appealing stat line that he had last year. But I think if he maintains his ability to make a ton of contact, he's going to bat at least 280 with upside of like winning a batting title. That's how good I think Vinny P is. And then Jung-Hoo Lee is, to me, almost like an outfield version of Luis Arias in terms of what his fantasy production is going to be. He's not going to be a big home run hitter. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling he actually doesn't steal as many bases as some people expect him to, but what he will do is hit for a high batting average. The guy strikes out so little. I think he could be a sub 10% strikeout rate guy, which nowadays there's only a few in the entire league that can do that. So if Lee's batting leadoff for the Giants and is just making contact all the time, I have a feeling he could bat 300 easily. And then once he gets more comfortable in the league in the next couple of years, I feel like he's a guy that should be fighting for that batting title in the National League. But I'm super pumped to see what he can do for my team.
I love him. I actually took him in Glarf late. I was like, this guy, I don't know if he's going to hit any home runs or steal any bases, but I think he's a shoo-in to hit 300.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to hit like 7 or 8 home runs, and people are going to be disappointed by that. But the batting average is for sure going to be there. But we can move away from categories and go to position and talk about our favorite picks at each position. I'll switch it up. I'll go Mike first this time. Mike, who's your target at catcher?
So I have a kind of a man crush here on Jonah Heim. And I don't know if I should, but I do. I really liked what he did last year. I mean, I don't expect him to repeat the 95 RBIs. I mean, that was really kind of eye-opening. As they were in the playoffs last year, and I was following that, I was like, geez, Jonah Heim had 95 RBIs. He had a great season. What I do like about Heim is that I think he's got a fairly solid batting average floor. And at catcher, that's something that I always worry about, right? So if you talk about drafting a guy like Jake Rogers, maybe, who might hit 20 home runs but do it with a 210 average, he might actually hurt you more than he helps you. Heim's going to hit 20 home runs, and he's probably going to hit 250. And I really like that. And he's assured of a spot in a really good lineup. It's a young lineup that's really kind of burgeoning. Obviously, they won the whole thing last year, but some of that competition has been stripped away. He doesn't have anybody like I said last time. With Grissom, he doesn't really have anybody looking over his shoulder. I mean, they've got Sam Huff, they've got Andrew Knizner, who's a career backup and not somebody that's going to really challenge him, I think, too much for at bats. So I think if Heim is healthy and he gets over 500 at bats, which I think he will, prime of his career, he's 28 years old. I think you're looking at a guy that can hit 250 with 20 home runs. And at a catcher position, if you have to take 2 and you get him as your second catcher, I'm thrilled if I get him as my second catcher.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge pick if you get him as your second catcher. And then Bryson, who's your favorite target at catcher?
Yeah, for me, catcher right now, I'm targeting quite often Logan O'Hoppe from the Angels. I don't know if that's O'Hoppe. I don't know if people pronounce his name.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a small sample. Actually, only had 200 plate appearances. Obviously, he was banged up for a while there. But yeah, he hit 14 home runs in 200 plate appearances. And I think as a catcher, to get that kind of power is something that I'm always looking for. And his average was, hit around 250 as well. So he wasn't, again, like Mike said, a Jake Rogers type of guy who's going to bat 200. I think he can give you 250, even if he drops it to 240. If you're giving me, 14 home runs and 200 plate appearances, if we can get that up to 25 to 30 at the catcher position, I'll be super happy. His K rate was 24% again, so it's not ideal. Like, I'd love to see that come down, but he's also, it was his first year in the majors. He's another young guy who I'm always get caught up in upside, so maybe that's bad. I should probably take the unsexy pick sometimes, but I always chase the upside. But he's someone I truly believe in, and I got to give a shout out to Drew Wheeler, who put me onto him before he even came up in the big leagues. He's a big catcher guy, and he was talking about a hobby on this Podapallooza last year. So I was buying shares of him last year, and now hopefully it's going to pay off this year when he gets a full season.
Yeah, I think Ohapi probably would have been in the running for Rookie of the Year last year if he had not gotten injured, because he really got off to such a hot start. But that power is legitimate, and there's not much competition there in LA, pretty similar to Jonah Heim. My two picks are Salvador Perez and Luis Campusano. Salvador Perez is somebody that I feel like is just super consistent every year, and he's a volume play as well. We saw him play 140 games last year, which is almost impossible to find at catcher from anybody else. So just his ability to almost guarantee you a 250 batting average, 25 home runs, and 80 RBI in a lineup that should continue to get better as Bobby Witt Jr. continues to grow. And same can be said for Vinny P and MJ Melendez and even Michael Garcia. I think that lineup is actually going to be a lot better this next year than it was last year, and Perez is going to benefit from that. And then Luis Campusano is more of a sneaky pick. I think he was really good last year in a small sample, but there's a lot that backs up what he did. As long as he doesn't do that goofy batting stance that he did in spring training on him.
I was going to say, did you see that? Yeah.
That's wild.
I saw that and I was like, oh no. Yeah, better stop drafting him. But he, according to one of Pitcher List metrics, which is ideal plate appearance, which basically accounts for how often a player makes good contact, he had a 38.5% IPA percentage. That led all of baseball. And the next five guys, just to show you that this stat is good, were Luis Arias, Ronald Acuna Jr., Bo Bichette, Freddie Freeman, and Corey Seager. Just, some of the best hitters in baseball. So the stat works, and Luis Campusano is number one. So if he's able to carry over what he had last year and then play it out for a full season without Gary Sanchez taking time away from him, I think he's a really legitimate second catcher pick in 15-team leagues. But yeah, that's catcher. We can move over to the cold corner, first base. Mike, who are you targeting? Who's your favorite target at first base?
Why is Tristan Casas not getting enough love?
I agree. It's criminal.
I mean, so I spent a little time with him because I thought, I'm looking at first base options. I don't want to take Andrew Vaughn, right? I just and I'm looking at him, and I kind of dove into him a little bit. I mean, he's going to probably be hitting third in that lineup, but his StatCast page is ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking last year, kind of missing out on him. This is a guy that I think easily is going to hit 30 home runs this year. He had a 263 average last year, 367 OBP. He walked at almost 14% clip. Barrel percentage, 13.1. Average exit velocity, really high. I mean, this is a guy that it seems like a monster waiting to happen, doesn't he?
Yeah, we saw it in the second half last year. He was incredible. I'm trying to pull it up. He had a 175 WRC plus in the second half last year. Batted 317 with a 1,000 OPS. He's legit. I think there's sort of a middle ground between that second half performance and his first half performance. But I think either way, he's going to be really good. I think he's got the ceiling of batting 275 with 35 home runs.
Yeah, right. I love him.
And Bryson, who's your favorite target at first base?
My first base target has been, this is a guy who, if I kind of miss out on a first baseman early in the draft and I'm kind of in the middle of the back half and I'm trying to find a way to fill that position, I've been targeting a lot of Ryan Mountcastle. I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes in Baltimore, just with all the young, sexy names that are out there. You kind of forget about him, but his ADP right now is around 240. So for me, again, if I missed out on first base, or if it's, and I'm in a league where we have two first basemen, as a second first baseman, I think he's a great pick. He's a guy I could see giving you roughly 20 homers, 75 RBIs. Again, depends. That Orioles lineup is kind of, it's a lot of young guys who are coming up and a lot of young guys moving around. So I'm not, I feel like the lineup could shift a little bit throughout the year. But if he plays well and he hits well, I think he's going to just benefit from being in that lineup that's getting better and better, every game that they play. So he's a guy, kind of a late target. A guy, again, who hits for a good average, who's not going to hurt you in that category and has some pretty good power numbers. And, is going to get some RBIs just being in that lineup again, having guys really talented around him. So,
yeah, Mountcastle's really consistent because his StatCast metrics are always there. His ceiling is somewhat limited by playing in Camden Yards, which I just can't imagine what it would be like if he moved to another team because of how electric his batted ball metrics are. He's been limited to, low 20s home run totals. Last year, 18. He only played 115 games, but nonetheless, this is a guy with barrel rates north of 12%, and that's going to keep him afloat playing in Baltimore. But that it'd be, I can't imagine like if he was on another team, just how incredible he would be. But I think we sort of saw that level in 2021 when he hit 33 home runs. That's that fence is really taken away from his power, but I still like him as a first base target. And then the two that I'm targeting are guys that I already mentioned. I think Torkelson and Pasquantino are sort of in the same tier, and I'm happy to get either of them. I just love their floor and their combination of floor and ceiling. Both of them, I feel like, if they do what they did last year, Vinny P obviously has to stay healthy, but then they also have a ceiling of just being some of the best hitters in baseball. So I'm always excited to get either of those guys. The only draft I've done thus far, I got Nathaniel Lowe, so I'm sort of fine with him because he goes so much later. First base is a position I'm content on waiting, but there's tons of upside in that like 100 to 175 range, which is usually where I want to attack first base. But moving over to second base, Mike, we got a familiar name here.
Yeah, we already talked about Thairo Estrada. I'm going to turn this one over to you guys. I mean, I really think he's going to have a really good year. It's a guy that I really like. I actually really like both of the guys that you guys came up with too. So I'll let you riff on that.
All right, Bryson, I have a feeling that you chose this player for a reason other than his baseball stats.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I had to pick, obviously, Bryson Stott. Just totally unbiased pick, not because of his name. No, it's actually funny. I'm big into collecting baseball cards, and I PC him solely because of his name, and then he's turned out to be a really good player, so it's just been a win-win for me. But yeah, he's a guy that I'm trying to target as much as I can. I think that Phillies lineup is still really good. There's still a powerful lineup and playing with Harper and Castellanos. I'm a big Brandon Marsh guy as well. I really like him. But yeah, I think Stott's a guy at second base, especially. I find it's a position that's kind of over the years kind of very up and down. But this year I feel like Stott's a guy who's just going to be, especially in redraft, but if you're in a dynasty league and you can acquire him too, he's going to give you consistency, which is something I think is valuable in fantasy. If he can give me, I was hoping for 15 home runs, 65 RBIs, and he's going to steal some bases for you too. He's got some speed to him as well, which is really nice. That's always a nice bonus if you can get a guy who's also going to steal some bags. It's 323 WOBA roughly, and he's a 109 guy. So apparently, I don't like taking anyone in the top 100. I don't know who I draft before 100th pick apparently. But yeah, he's a guy that's not because of his name, just because of his baseball talents. I'm targeting in as many drafts as I can.
Yeah, I sort of feel obliged to like Bryson Stott. I wrote him up as a breakout candidate for the Phillies last preseason, and it made me look smart. So, I'll be in debt to him for at least a couple of years. So, yeah, I like Bryson Stott as well, though I do seem to be targeting second baseman earlier because of how steep the fall off is at that position. So I've been targeting Jose Altuve. If I don't get a second baseman earlier, Jose Altuve is sort of that last guy in the top tier where you can get in the third or fourth round. And he just feels so safe with such a high ceiling. He's never not been good. And if he's able to stay healthy for a full season, it's a guy that's just going to give you incredible production. We've seen him hit 30 home runs before, about over 300. He just sort of does everything. The stolen bases are down, but maybe with a full season in the new rules, maybe he gets back to 20 stolen bases. But then a later pick, if I'm missing out on Jose Altuve, I do like getting Edouard Julien. he sort of just does a lot of everything. He walks an incredible amount. And if he stays at the top of the Twins order, it's a guy that's going to score a ton of runs. He's got really great StatCast metrics. His barrel rate was over 13% last year. So he's got power. The only problem is the strikeouts. And then the projections are pretty low on him, having him for 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and like a sub 250 batting average. That's from the BatX. And that's a lot worse than he did last year, which in a lot more games. So I feel like it might all cancel out sort of the sophomore slump and maybe him getting a little better and not facing as many left-handers. But I think he's a guy that is going to be pretty solid, and he's going pretty late in drafts so that you're not really hurting the rest of your team by drafting him.
Yeah, I like Julian a lot. He's a fellow Canadian, so I'm also slightly biased towards him. But yeah, I really liked what I saw from him last year. So yeah, those projections are a little surprising. So I think he'll do better than that.
Yeah, I feel like he's got to be guaranteed like 20 home runs. I could see the batting average going down, but 20 home runs and a lot of runs at the top of the Twins order definitely gets me excited. We can go to shortstop. Mike, who are you targeting at shortstop?
Well, we talked about Oneil Cruz, and he was the guy that I had listed here, but I'm going to pivot off of that. And a guy that first of all, I feel like Willy Adames never gets any love, and I think he's a really solid player who is capable of hitting 30 home runs. Exactly. Even though the batting average is not going to be great, but he's going to be a volume play. He's going to play every day. He's going to play 150 games. But the guy that I think is really interesting this year that nobody's really talking about is Zach Neto. You know, he got hurt last year. He's a guy that almost is guaranteed playing time the way that it looks to me based on roster resource. I really think that he's capable of putting up a pretty good counting stat line here. I mean, 20 home runs and double-digit steals seem well within the realm of possibility for me with an average that won't kill you. I guess maybe the problem that people are having with it is that where does he hit? You know, is he hitting leadoff? They're saying Moniak, but like really, I mean, are we going to really do that again? So I don't know. Like if he bats leadoff, I'm way more interested, but he's another guy that's going late that's going to give you some counting stats and not kill your batting average. I'm not understanding why people aren't giving him more of a shake.
Yeah, I feel like it really all comes down to the batting order, because if he's batting ninth, like a lot of his production goes away. But yeah, I've been super intrigued by him and just sort of scared away by how deep into the order he's going. But he definitely has the skills. Definitely has the skills. Bryson, who are you targeting at shortstop?
Yeah, my shortstop target is Dansby Swanson, another Cub. I think last year was kind of a down year, I think, for some people in their eyes, just, you know, with that contract that he got kind of came with big expectations. And where he was going in drafts last year, I wasn't really in on him all that much. But this year, he's kind of come back down to earth in ADP. He's going around 122. He's still a guy that, you know, again, it was that first overall pick pedigree. He showed what he could do in Atlanta. I always think when guys move teams, especially if they've been with, you know, he was with Atlanta his whole career and then he went to Chicago, I always feel like that first year is always a little bit tougher on guys, just kind of getting used to the new park and getting used to the new scenery and all that. So I think I expect him to, you know, still give you about 25 home runs this year, 80 to 85 RBIs and some runs on top of that. A guy, again, you're not taking him super early, kind of like last year. You know, there's a lot of hype around him with that contract. I think this year is kind of, his ADP is more where I like it. And I still think he has a higher ceiling than what he showed last year in his first year with Chicago. So.
For sure. He's super safe. And, you know, now with that lineup at full strength with Bellinger in there, gives him even more opportunity to score, knock in runs. Yeah, definitely a very solid pick to get at shortstop. I sort of have very disparate picks here in terms of where they're going in drafts. I put Bobby Witt Jr., which obviously anybody's going to be happy having Bobby Witt Jr. on their team. But this is more to say when I'm in the first round and I'm picking top 6 or whatever, I'm choosing him over the rest of the outfielders. I just think shortstop's a lot less deep than outfield. And he's got one of the highest ceilings in baseball. And we saw him be one of the top fantasy producers last year. And I think, as I spoke about earlier, with all of my Kansas City Royals targets for some reason, that lineup's going to be a lot better in 2024. And I think Bobby Witt Jr. is going to benefit greatly from that. So if he's, you know, a 30-50 guy, almost like as his floor, I'll take that all day over the other outfielders, which I think are all great. But it's the position eligibility there with Bobby Witt. And then sort of a later pick, I like Ezekiel Tovar. He definitely underwhelmed last year. He was sort of somewhat of a breakout pick. He's going to be a rookie, but we saw him getting that everyday playing time for the Rockies. And while he did play the whole season last year and then was decent in terms of 15 home runs, 11 stolen bases, and he got that BABIP induced 253 batting average, which not great. It would have been a lot worse outside of Coors. The guy was 21 last year, and he never even played in AAA before. I think he played in 2022, played 5 games at AAA. So there's a lot to say about him getting more experience in the majors, having a full off season of just knowing how to prepare for major league pitching, and then also just getting older. He's still only going to be 22. So maybe I'm a year early, but this is a guy that clearly has 2020 potential. And with the BABIP effects in Colorado, I feel like his batting average is going to be higher than you'd normally expect. So if this is a guy that bats 270 with 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases, I'm going to be super pumped, because that's super plug really late in drafts, and definitely is a guy that you can bet on that, because we saw what his floor was last year as a 21-year-old, and he's going to be batting in the top 3 of that lineup as well.
I agree.
Alrighty, then we can move over to the hot corner, and this is honestly like my favorite position to talk about this year. I just feel like there's so many fun and exciting players at this position. But Mike, who are you targeting at third base?
Probably stupid of me, but I love Royce Lewis. Everybody's worried about the injury concerns, and I hear that, and I'm not deaf to that, but this is a guy I think that really is going to be a star in the making. He looked all the part last year, being in the American League Central. I got to see him a lot. I also got to see your guy, Bryson Riley Green. These guys can play ball. Lewis, if he stays healthy, playing third base and batting second in that lineup, which is what roster resource is projecting, I think it's a shoo-in to have an average in the 285 to 300 range, 25 to 30 home runs. And here's the thing that I also think is interesting. He had the knee injury, and so people think he's a complete zero on the bases. He's actually pretty fast. Don't know how that's going to translate to his base running, but he stole 5 bases in the second half of the season, and that's not a zero. And so where he's going, I know a lot of people are saying, what? I can't take Royce Lewis here in the third round. Yeah, you can. I think if he stays healthy, he's going to be a stud and an all-star fixture at third base of the American League.
Yeah, I just hope he doesn't go down that Byron Buxton path where it's just, he's just always injured, because he's so talented. That Grand Slam barrage he went on last year was just super exciting, and we saw him carry it over into the postseason as well.
Sure did.
All right, Bryson, who's your favorite target at the hot corner?
Guy I'm targeting a lot is, again, it's not like a sleeper by any means, but it's Manny Machado. I think a lot of people would say he had a down year last year for his standards anyways. But that down year was still a 30 home run, 90 RBI, 260 average season. And he's going currently around ADPs, roughly 50. So, I mean, at that point, if you're getting a guy who can give you over 30 home runs and can push for 100 RBIs with the 50th pick, for me, that's a no-brainer. I know the Padres obviously losing Soto, that kind of hurts the lineup a little bit, but they still, again, they can never put it together on the field, but on paper, they have a great lineup. And I think that he's just going to, again, if he gives you those same numbers they gave you last year and you're taking him at pick 50, I think you'll be laughing about that, and you'll be happy to have him at the hot corner on your team.
Yeah, I mean, last year sort of felt like his floor too, because he was obviously injured for most of the season, and he still produced 260 batting average and 30 home runs. And that surgery that he had this offseason is going to keep him as a DH to start the season, but maybe that will allow him to focus more on hitting, as he's always been one of the best defenders, but maybe keeping him off his feet for a little bit will help him stay more productive at the plate. I love third base because I have 2 of my favorite breakouts here. One of them is Brian Hayes, who finally did what we've been wanting him to do for so long. I wrote an article last August or September about Brian Hayes' breakout, and I compared him very similarly to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Yandy Diaz, 2 guys that had clear potential, Vladdy with his prospect pedigree and Yandy with his beautiful biceps. Neither of them were able to.
They are.
He is, that guy's yoked. they couldn't hit the ball in the air, and it kept them from reaching their power potential. And Ke'Bryan Hayes has been in that same boat where he hits the ball hard consistently, but it's always on the ground. And last year it was really interesting. In the first half, he started to hit the ball in the air, but it didn't pay dividends. He didn't start hitting home runs. And then he got injured. He came back for one game and then went back on the IL. And then once he finally returned in full, he maintained the changes that he had in the first half and carried them over into the second half. And it started going exactly how we expected. He started hitting the ball over the fence. I think there was a portion, I think August, he might have hit more home runs than he had hit in any previous single season, just in that 1 month, which is absolutely bonkers. So I think this is a guy that is going to reach 20 home runs. He's got really great contact ability. So I think he's going to bat at least 270. And then he's got surprising speed for a third baseman. And with his defense, he's going to be in the lineup every day. And so I love Ke'Bryan Hayes. And then Jake Berger, he showed an ability to hit for more contact after he got traded to the Marlins, but that had started before he got traded. That had actually started while he was still a White Sox. And so I think if he's able to pair that new contact ability with his ability to hit over 30 home runs. This is a guy that bats 270 with 30 home runs. And it's really sneaky because he's going, around pick 150. We got 4 minutes left and we still got to go through outfield and our favorite late pick. So we got this. Mike, who's your favorite target in the outfield?
I'll be brief. It's Jordan Walker. Why not? Why is everybody crapping all over his season last year? He was 20. He was 21 years old. Let's give him a chance. Go.
Absolutely,
And,
I agree.
Bryson, who's your favorite target in the outfield?
Yeah, I will be brief. Mine is Marcell Ozuna. He's a guy who's going around 142. He's in a stacked lineup and he's got a big bat and he's going to give you power and RBIs and he's a DH quite often now, but he still has outfield eligibility. So I like him at that pick and I'll leave it there. So we have for the sake of time.
Yeah, I think he's only got outfield eligibility in Yahoo, which is, that's fine. That's a very prevalent league to use. But yeah, he's got some legitimate power in the middle of that deadly Braves lineup. I have Seiya Suzuki, who we talked about, and Jared Kelenic, which I'm really excited about because he's a guy that's, shown tons of potential for a long time, but he just hasn't reached it. And with the news coming that he's going to play every day for the Braves, that gets me really excited because I think the pressure is going to be taken off of him. He was supposed to be the guy in Seattle. And when Julio became the guy in Seattle, I don't think the pressure really got taken off Kelenic. I feel like he wanted to be the 1B to Julio's 1A. And now in Atlanta, where it's just like they're not even counting on him, he's just sort of like an extra piece. I think he's going to reach his fullest potential, as we saw with like Matt Olson last year, just leaving a place that maybe wasn't the best fit for him. So I'm super excited for that. And the Seattle ballpark is really bad for left-handed hitters. So I'm excited to see what he does in Atlanta. But now for our favorite hitters going after pick 400, Mike, who's your favorite super late target?
Former White Sox great Tim Anderson. There's no way he can be that bad this year. No way. And he's going to bat second behind Arise. He's going to have a much better season. Expect double-digit home runs and double-digit steals and a batting average closer to 270, 275.
I think if he doesn't get knocked out, it'll be a successful season.
Oh, my. Jake, you know what I forgot about you? I forgot about your dry sense of humor and how much I enjoyed that in Arizona. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me that I'm a White Sox fan and I will continue to suffer.
You're welcome. Bryson, who's your favorite pick after 400?
Mine is Rowdy Tellez. He's with the Pirates now. He's playing first base for them. I don't really see anyone kind of pushing him for playing time. And this is a guy who hit 35 home runs in 2022. So he's got power, he's got potential, and that pick will like 459. Even if he gives me 20 home runs, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, totally fair. And then I've got Marco Luciano. I just love the potential there. His prospect stock has sort of fallen a little bit as he's gotten older, but the guy's still super young and he's expected to take over shortstop every day for the Giants. It's somewhat of a homer pick, but I'm excited to see what Luciano can do in a full season. I think he's got a lot of power, and if he's hitting 20 home runs and playing every single day, I think it's a pretty decent late pick.
All right,
look at that timing, Justin.
You nailed it right there. You guys a chance to promote yourself real quick before I boot you out of here. So, Mike, why don't you remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug anything you got going on?
Terrible Twitter handle at MDRC0508. I am not a doctor. I just am an old guy writing about baseball. I write at Fantrax. I write at Rotoballer. I also am the co-host of the Fantasy Baseball Beat with Chris Torres. Hit me up, and please, anybody listening, take care of your mental health. It's the most important thing you can do for yourself.
There you go, Bryson.
Awesome. Yeah. Most of my work will just be on Twitter at Bryson CK or X. Sorry. And yeah, I'm working on some stuff. Got some new equipment coming in for recording, so I'm gonna be putting out more content in the near future once it arrives. So, but that'll all be on my Twitter and my X, which is at Bryson CK.
Awesome. And Jake, close us out.
Great. Yeah, you can follow me at Jake Crumpler on Twitter. I write for Pitcher List and Baseball HQ. I do the In the Pen podcast. I'll be doing the First Pitch podcast during the season. And I do my personal podcast, Free Baseball, which you can find at Athletes Hub on Twitter. And you can find all of my work in one nice spot, crumplerbaseball.com.
There you go. Thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate all the knowledge you dropped.